بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له مخلصا له الدين ولو كره الكافرون، وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله أرسله رحمة للعالمين. أما بعد، يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وكونوا مع الصادقين. As to follow, first I thank Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Raḥmah ar-Rahim, Azza wa Jal, for guiding us here tonight, inshallah, upon something which is pleasing to Him, upon al-birr wa taqwa, firstly, and secondly, upon learning and benefiting, bi-idhnillahi subhanahu wa ta'ala. And we ask Allah, the mighty and the majestic, to make it to those whom the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said in that hadith, which is reported and authentically traced back to him from countless numbers of the companions by mass narration, in which he alayhi salatu wasalam said to the companions, نَضَّرَ اللَّهُ مُرَأً سَمِعَ مَقَالَتِي فَوَعَاهَا ثُمَّ أَدَّاهَا كَمَا سَمِعَهَا. May Allah brighten the face. May Allah brighten the face of the man who hears my statement. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless and give happiness and brighten the face of the man who hears my statement, who hears my hadith, and he memorizes it perfectly. And then he passes it on exactly as he heard it. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it of those whom the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said, and that which is also authentically reported back to him, إِنَّ أَوْلَى النَّاسِ بِي يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ أَكْثَرُهُمْ عَلَيَّ صَلَاةً. Those people who will be closest to me on the day of judgment, those people who will be close to me, closer than anyone else, are those who send the most praise on me. And we ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, by His beautiful names and perfect attributes, to make us of those whom the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said, من صلى علي صلاة صلى الله عليه بها عشرة. Whoever sends one prayer on me, whoever says sallallahu alayhi wa sallam upon me once, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will send 10 of the likes on him. And we ask Allah Azza wa Jal, by His beautiful names and perfect attributes, to make us of those whom the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said, كل أمتي يدخلون الجنة إلا من أبى. All of my nation will enter paradise, except for those who refuse. And when he was asked, وَمَنْ يَأْبَى يَا رَسُولَ اللَّهِ, who in his right mind, who in his right state of sense would reject and refuse to enter paradise? The Prophet ﷺ said, whoever follows my sunnah will enter paradise, and whoever disobeys me, goes against my sunnah, he will not enter paradise. He has refused. So we ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make us of these individuals, those people who have been promised by as-Sadiq al-Masduq, the ever-truthful messenger and prophet Muḥammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Those who the promise has been made upon his noble tongue, alayhi salatu wa salam. And this can only take place by learning his sunnah, by sitting and studying his sunnah, memorizing it, acting upon it, and calling to it. So as you all know, bi-idhnillahi azza wa jal, the topic of my talk tonight will be on the compilation and the conservation of the Sunnah. The conservation and the compilation of the Sunnah. And before we start studying this issue, speaking about the technical terms and the masail, the issues and the affairs and the matters, etc., we have to remind ourselves, why do we study Sunnah? What is so important about studying the Sunnah? What is so essential and mandatory about studying the Sunnah? And what was the role of the Sunnah and its sciences and the preservation of al-Islam? How was Islam, the perfect religion, how was it preserved? Allah Azza wa Jalla said it in His mighty book, إِنَّا نَحْنُ نَزَّلْنَا ذِكْرَ وَإِنَّا لَهُ لَحَافِظُونَ. Indeed, we have sent down the zikr. We have sent down to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Indeed, we have revealed the zikr, the remembrance, and we shall protect it. We shall safeguard it. And we know that the sunnah without any doubt, without any shadow of doubt, is protected by Allah Azza wa Jalla. Preserved. And conserved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala from two aspects. From two aspects. The first aspect is that the zikr, the remembrance, it includes the Quran and it includes the Sunnah. The zikr, فَاسْأَلُوا أَهْلَ الذِّكْرِ إِن كُنتُمْ لَا تَعْلَمُونَ. Ask the people of zikr if you don't know. And the ulama are no other, or the ulama are no other individuals but those who memorize the Quran and the Sunnah. So the Sunnah is from the zikr. So Allah Azza wa Jalla has promised to protect it and to safeguard it. The second aspect or angle from which we know that the Sunnah was preserved and will continue to be preserved until that time which Allah Azza wa Jalla decreed to take the knowledge from the slaves, to take it from the hearts of the scholars and take it from the hearts of men and give death to the scholars, is that حِفْظُ الْمُبَيَّنِ يَسْتَلْزِمُ حِفْظَ الْمُبَيَّنِ. When Allah Azza wa Jalla promised and assured to protect the Quran, there's something that Allah Azza wa Jalla has mentioned which will explain the Quran. And it is commentary of the Quran. And it is an expounding upon the Quran. What is that thing? It's the Sunnah. As Allah Azza wa Jalla has said in the Quran, وَأَنزَلْنَا إِلَيْكَ ذِكْرًا لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ مَا نُزِّلَ إِلَيْهِمْ وَلَعَلَهُمْ يَتَفَكَّرُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala stated, and indeed we have sent down to you, O Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the dhikr. We have sent down to you the dhikr. لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ, in order that you may clarify to the people, explain to the people, show the people what has been sent down to them. And perhaps that the men or mankind would think and ponder. So we see that Allah Azza wa Jalla has clearly named that which He sent down to Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, dhikr, once again. In this verse in Surah An-Nahl, He called it dhikr. And He said, or He clearly explained to us, Azza wa Jal, the task and the duty of the Messenger Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, which is what? لِتُبَيِّنَ لِلنَّاسِ, to clarify to the people. So how can the Quran remain to be preserved if the explanation of the Quran is not preserved? لا يمكن, it's impossible. It's impossible. That which is mubayyan, that which is explained, the thing which explains it must be preserved also. So this is something that we believe in wholeheartedly, without any doubt, that the Quran has been preserved by Allah Azza wa Jal, and the Sunnah has been preserved by Allah Azza wa Jal. And this topic, without any doubt, is a mighty topic, a magnificent topic. It's a topic which is worthy of being explained, spoken about, and mentioned in a series of lectures. And there's no doubt that this topic, we cannot encompass every sphere and every aspect and everything which pertains to it in 1 hour, or 2 hours, or 3 hours, or 4 hours, or a day. It is impossible for us to sit down and to mention those tremendous efforts that the early generations of the Muslims put forth in memorizing, preserving, recording, and passing down the Sunnah. It's impossible. It is impossible. And as we all know, that Aisha radiallahu anha stated, Umirna, she says that we have been commanded بأن ننزل الناس منازلهم. We have been commanded to give the people their due status. We have been ordered to give the people their due status. And there lies no doubt that we cannot give these scholars, these Muslims, their status in 1 hour. However, as it is said, ما لا يمكن كله لا يترك جله. That which you can't do in totality, that which you can't do all of it 100%, then you shouldn't leave off 50% or 60%. فاتقوا الله ما استطعتم. So بإذن الله عز وجل, in this lecture, we wish to speak about the compilation and the preservation of the Sunnah. And we'll mention it in the following points, باختصار, in summary. As I just mentioned, it's something which can be spoken on in several lectures. The first point, of course, is that we go back to the definition of the term Sunnah. What does the term or the word Sunnah mean? The Prophet's way, as we all know, memorized. But it's much more than that, than just the Prophet's way. What does the term Sunnah mean? What is the status of the Sunnah in the Quran and the Sunnah? according to the Sahaba and their followers and their students, the Tabi'un and the Atba' Tabi'in, the Salaf? What were the efforts that were put forth by the companions during the lifetime of Muhammad and after his death in conserving the Sunnah? And what were the efforts that were put forth by the Tabi'in, and so on and so forth, until the 1st century, the 2nd century, the 3rd century, which was the golden age for the prophetic Sunnah, the 4th century, the 5th century, up until this day of ours. So firstly we say, the term Sunnah, Sin, Noon, Sanan, Sunnah, Sin and 2 noons. The word Sunnah has several meanings in the Arabic language. From the meanings of Sunnah in the Arabic language is a Sharīʿah, is, as you just said, a way, a method, a path, a habit, a customary practice. Anything that you do, whether it's good or whether it's bad, whether it's praiseworthy or whether it's blameworthy. This is what the word Sunnah, this is from the linguistical meanings of the term Sunnah. Whether it is a good thing pertaining to religion or not. The word Sunnah literally means a path. This is from the meanings of the term Sunnah. And there are several other meanings. As for the term Sunnah in the Islamic legislature, or the terminology of the people of knowledge, then it also has several meanings. The first of these meanings is that which is known to the scholars of hadith, the muhaddithun. And they say that the Sunnah is a synonym or muradif for the term hadith. It is everything. The Sunnah, according to the scholars of hadith, now we're going to mention several different definitions. It is not agreed upon amongst the ulama of Islam, the term Sunnah. According to this group, it means this. According to that group, it means that. As for the scholars of hadith, the muhaddithun, then the term Sunnah is everything which is attributed to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, whether it be a statement, an action, a silent approval, a physical description of his moral conduct and his character, and anything from the seerah, whether it was before the time of revelation or after the time of revelation. The scholars of hadith, they say that the term Sunnah is everything which is attributed to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, whether it's a statement, an action, something that he allowed the companions to do, a physical description of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, something from his conduct and his character, or something from the seerah, something that was done during the lifetime of Muhammad ﷺ. And some ulama mention whether it was before he became a prophet or after he became a prophet and a messenger. This is what the term Sunnah means according to the scholars of hadith. As for the term Sunnah, according to ulama al-usul, the scholars of usul al-fiqh, then they say Sunnah is anything which comes from the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam besides the Quran, which can be used for a legislative ruling. Anything that Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam brought, that he came with, that wasn't the Quran, which can be used to say something that is permissible or impermissible from the deen, hukum shari. This is what the term Sunnah means according to the scholars of usul al-fiqh. So we see here is a different meaning according to the scholars of hadith. As for the term Sunnah, according to the fuqaha, the jurists, or the doctors of law of fiqh, then they say that the Sunnah is that thing which the Muslim is commanded to do. He's ordered to do. He's requested to do, but it is not incumbent. It isn't obligatory. If he does it, he'll get a reward from Allah Azza wa Jalla. And Allah is pleased with him for that action. But if he leaves it off, in general, he's not to be blamed. He's not to be blamed. Even though there are many acts which are not obligatory, but many of the people of knowledge look down upon the ones who didn't perform it. As Imam Ahmad rahimahullah stated about the man who doesn't pray Salatul Witr, he says, إِنَّهُ رَجُلٌ سُوءٌ. He's an evil man. A man who doesn't make the witr prayer is not a good man. And as some of the people of knowledge of the past said, that the one who doesn't make Salatul Witr, his testimony is not to be accepted in front of the Qadi. It doesn't mean that it's obligatory, even though there are some scholars who say that it is obligatory. Many of the Hanafi ulama and fuqaha they say witr is obligatory, but witr is not obligatory, but it's highly recommended. Istihbab, mu'akkad, it's highly recommended. So this is what the term sunnah means according to the fuqaha. It is that thing when we say sunnah. It's a sunnah, it's not wajib. It is something which is recommendable. It's something that you should do, but it isn't obligatory. And we can look at this definition, and we can see how different it is to the first two definitions. It's very different. It's very contrast to the first two definitions. Anything which Allah and His Messenger, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, have ordered you to do, commanded you to do, requested that you do, but it's not ala wajhi al-ilzam, something which is incumbent, something that you must do. This is the definition of the term sunnah according to the fuqaha. There's another definition of the term sunnah, which is the term sunnah according to the scholars of creed, the scholars of aqidah, from the Sahaba, from the Tabi'een, and to the second and third and fourth generation. They mention the term sunnah, al-i'tiqad, creed. When they say sunnah, they don't mean a hadith. When they say sunnah, they don't mean something which is making rak'at after the obligatory prayer. When they say sunnah, they mean aqidah, iman, tawheed. And there are several books that have this title: Sharh al-Sunnah, Usul al-Sunnah, Sharīʿah al-Sunnah, As-Sunnah, Sharh Usul al-I'tiqad al-Sunnah, countless books of the ulama. Al-Ḥamīd, Imam Ahmad, al-Tabari, al-Lalakai, al-Barbahari, Ibn Jarir al-Tabari, and so on and so forth. They mention the term sunnah, and they don't mean anything pertaining to a hadith, but they mean aqidah, the aqidah which is in the kitab and the sunnah. Wadih. And lastly, the last definition of the term sunnah is it could be applied to the actions of some of the companions, And there's several examples for this, which we don't have the time to mention. So in brief, we mentioned how many definitions? 5. The first definition was the term sunnah according to who? al-Hadith, the people of hadith, the muhaddithun. The second definition was according to who? The fuqaha, al-usuliyin, the people of usul al-fiqh, the theory of fiqh. The third definition was according to who? What group from the scholars? The fuqaha, the jurists, the people who deal with halal, haram, mufti, scholars who give fatwa. When they say this is sunnah, that's sunnah. So we see from these definitions the importance of understanding these definitions first. Now let's see if we truly understand these definitions. Who can mention an example of the term sunnah according to the scholars of hadith? The scholars of hadith, an example of the sunnah according to their terminology, what they mean. Who can mention an example? An example, an actual specimen, an example of what they mean by it. A statement of hadith. We didn't understand the definition if we can't mention an example. And Shaykh ibn Uthaymeen rahimahullah mentioned that the definition becomes clear the tanbih, by making an example. We said that sunnah, according to the scholars of hadith, is anything which is a statement, an action, a physical description, a seerah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Clear? So that from that definition, if that definition is clear, this would be the answer will be very, very easy. Sallallahu. Ahsan. When the man came to the Prophet sallallahu, he said, "Awsini, give me advice, counsel me." La taghdab. That's a statement. Ahsan. Barakallahu feek. Tayyib. An example of the term sunnah according to the scholars of usul al-fiqh. Any example? Something which could be a proof for a legislative hukm. It's similar to the first example. La taghdab. Don't become angry. We say in that hadith is a prohibition of becoming angry, whether it's haram or whether it's disliked. According to the fuqaha, an example of something which is a sunnah, according to the scholars of fiqh, it's just a sunnah. Fadal Khalifa. Growing the beard and trimming the mustache. Fire. We want to come back to this issue. It's very important. And we forgot to mention, we explained it, but as some of the people of the past said, as-sunnatu sunnatan. Sunnatun al-akhdu biha wajib. Wa sunnatun al-akhdu biha fadila. One of the tabi'een, I believe they said that the sunnah is of two types. Pay close attention, and this will alleviate you from several iskalat, several problems and issues amongst the Muslims today. The sunnah is of two types. One type of sunnah that you must do. It goes back to the definition. According to the fuqaha, sunnah is recommended. According to al-Hadith, the sunnah could be recommended, could be haram, could be liked, it could be theater, it could be have no ruling whatsoever. It's sunnah. The second type of sunnah is the sunnah which is virtuous. You should do it. So, growing the beard, is it sunnah? Yes or no? Is growing the beard sunnah? Follow. It's sunnah. Which type of sunnah is it? The obligatory sunnah. And the proof is the fatwa, a ruling, a statement of one of the tabi'een. Is that the dalil? Is that the dalil? Sheikh Abdullah ibn Baz Raḥmah gave countless fatwa about growing the beard. It's obligatory. Is that the dalil? Not the dalil. One of the tabi'een, he said, one of the salaf said, is that the dalil? Huh? Is that the dalil? What Imam Ahmad radiallahu anhu, Raḥmah, what he said, is that the dalil? Huh? What's the dalil? What's the dalil? What's the proof? What's the evidence? What's the proof, ya Ikhwan? The hadith of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. A'aful liha, grow the beard. Say it. In brief, because we don't have that much time. This sunnah is obligatory without any doubt. Trimming the mustache. The Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, he said in a hadith which was collected by Imam al-Tirmidhi, and he authenticated it, and Nasa'i and others. Narrated by Zayd ibn Arqam, radiallahu anhu. Man lam ya'khudh min sharibihi falaysa minna. He says, whoever does not take from his mustache is not from us. Whoever does not trim his mustache, at least trim it, falaysa minna, he's not from us. Is that recommended or wajib? Wajib, without a doubt. Because the Prophet clearly negated for that person to be from the Muslims. That's severe. So that's not a correct answer. We need another answer. An example of something which is sunnah according to the fuqaha. Something which is recommended according to the scholars of fiqh. Fadl. Wudu. Wudu, wajib or sunnah? Fasl, explain it. It could be wajib. It could be sunnah. Fasl, explain. What type of wudu? La. Ahsan, washing the parts of wudu more than once. Or if a person had wudu, and he made wudu again. It's sunnah. It's sunnah according to the scholars of hadith or according to the scholars of fiqh. Scholars of fiqh. It's not obligatory, but it's recommended that you do it. واضح? طيب, an example of sunnah according to the scholars of aqidah. An example of something from the sunnah. Omar. An example of something which is sunnah according to the scholars of aqidah. Very easy answer. You're thinking two parts. Very, very simple answer. Very simple answer. Hold on, let's try it. Ahsan, barakallahu feek. Believe that the believers will see their Lord on Yawm al-Qiyamah. The Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam said, إِنَّكُمْ لَتَرَوْنَ رَبَّكُمْ كَمَا تَرَوْنَ الْقَمَرَ لَيْلَةَ الْبَدْرِ. He says, indeed, you will see your Lord as you see the moon when it's full, when it's a clear night. This is something that is from Aqeedah. We believe in it. Is this something pertaining to recommended? Is it something which is it's Aqeedah, Sunnah. It's an example of Sunnah according to the scholars of who? Of Aqeedah. Ahsantum. طيب. وهكذا. واضح يا إخوان. طيب. As to the status of the Sunnah, then there lies no doubt that there are countless ayat in the Quran and countless hadith of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, in which we can benefit and understand the great status of the Sunnah of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam. And Allah Azza wa Jalla has mentioned it in several places, in several different styles and manners. Sometimes Allah Azza wa Jalla mentions the Sunnah, commanding us to follow it. In other places, mentioning that we will receive guidance. In other places, negating the iman of those who don't submit to the rule of Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. In other places, warning us from opposing his way, threatening those who oppose his way, that they will have punishment, fitna, disease of the heart, and so on and so forth. And the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, in countless places, he commanded us, alaykum bi sunnati, hold fast to my sunnah. Ala innama harrama Rasulullah mithlu ma harrama Allah. And which we find that the ruling of Muhammad sallallahu is equal to the ruling of Allah Azza wa Jalla. It's similar. It's no different. What's haram in the Quran is just like what's haram in the Sunnah. It's no different. And there are several ahadith in which the Messenger of Allah ﷺ has clearly stated this. And there are countless statements of the Salaf regarding the status of the Sunnah. Countless statements of the companions regarding the status of the Sunnah. And alhamdulillah, there are several books in English, and I believe several articles, and I hope several lectures that have been made or done explaining and expanding on this point. We don't have the sufficient time to mention this in detail. And if we had the sufficient time, then alhamdulillah, we can sit and mention them one after another after another. Alhamdulillah. So, the next thing that we want to move on to, bi'idhnillah azza wa jalla, with regard to the compilation of the Sunnah, is where did the compilation of the Sunnah start? When did it start? And how did it start? How did it begin? Was the Sunnah recorded, written down? Was it memorized? When was it memorized? When was it recorded? Who started it? Who was the pioneer in recording and compiling the Sunnah? And also the different types of the Sunnah. We want to think about this and expound on this briefly. Bi'idhnillah azza wa jalla. And the answer is very clear, walillahi alhamd, is that the foundation of this is in the Quran. When Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, وَمَا أَتَاكُمُ الرَّسُولُ فَخُذُوهُ وَمَا نَهَاكُمْ عَنْهُ فَانْتَهُوا وَاتَّقُوا اللَّهَ إِنَّ اللَّهَ شَدِيدُ الْعِقَابِ. Whatever the messenger gives you, Surah Al-Hashr, when Allah spoke about the faith, the wealth that the believers took without any physical fighting, and he spoke about the distribution of that wealth amongst the companions. He says, whatever he gives you, Muhammad sallallahu, then do what with it? Take it. And whatever he forbids you from and doesn't come your way, then avoid it. And fear Allah. And fear Allah. For indeed Allah is severe in punishment. So we see in this verse, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has commanded us to do what? To take his sunnah. And it's impossible for his sunnah to be taken unless it is preserved and memorized. Unless it is preserved and memorized and studied. For indeed, the sunnah is exactly like the Quran from the aspect of it being divine revelation. It's wahy. It's wahy. As Allah Azza wa Jalla stated in the Quran, وَمَا يَنْتِقُ عَنِ الْهَوَىٰ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا وَحْيٌ يُوحَىٰ عَلَّمَهُ شَدِيدُ الْقُوَىٰ. Allah said, and the Messenger of Muhammad doesn't speak from his vain desire. He doesn't speak from emotion, from feeling, from anger or pleasure or favoritism. La. It's only wahy, revelation, divine inspiration, which he has given. Which he has given. So we see in the hadith of Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiyallahu anhu, and which he said, كُنْتُ أَكْتُبْ كُلَّ شَيْءٍ مِّن رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ. Indeed, I used to write and record everything that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ said. Everything. He says, فَنَهَتْنِي قُرَيْشٍ. He says, so Quraysh, the pagan Arabs, the infidels, the disbelievers of Mecca, they forbade me. And they said to him, you write from this man, Muhammad, and he speaks when he's angry. He speaks when he's happy. He's a human being. They put doubt in his heart. So he went to the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and he told him what they said to him. What did he say to Abdullah ibn Amr ibn al-As radiyallahu anhu? He says, اكتب هو الذي نفسي بيده هو الذي نفسي بيده لا يخرج منه إلا الحق. He says, write it down, record it, for indeed I swear by the one in whose hand my soul lies, nothing leaves my mouth but the truth. Nothing leaves my mouth except that it's true. So we see this is from the foundations of the preservation of the Quran. And when the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, when he spoke to the Sahaba during that farewell Hajj, and he mentioned to them several things that they had to do, and several things that they were prohibited from doing. A man from Yemen came, and his name was Abu Shah, and he asked the Messenger of Allah ﷺ to give me your khutbah. Tell me your khutbah. Tell me, O Muhammad ﷺ, write it down for me. He said, Uktubu li Abi Shah. He said, write my khutbah down for Abu Shah. Write it down for him. Write it down for him. So we find in this hadith several benefits. The first benefit is what? Is that the Messenger of Allah ﷺ commanded for his sunnah to be written down. So this is a refutation of those who say that the sunnah wasn't recorded during the lifetime of Muhammad ﷺ. And the sunnah wasn't recorded until the 3rd century. The sunnah was never preserved. It's impossible for it to be authentic. It has to be fabricated. It has to be spurious. There's some doubt about the authenticity because we have no books of hadith during the 1st and 2nd centuries. That's false. It stated, Uktubu. Uktubu. He says, write it down. واضح? Also the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, he says, فَعَلَيْكُمْ بِسُنَّتِي وَسُنَّةِ الْخُلَفَاءِ الرَّاشِدِينَ. He says, hold fast to my sunnah. Adhere to my sunnah. Cling to my sunnah. Bite down to my sunnah. How can this be done if a person is ignorant of the sunnah? How can this be done if there are narrations and things that are attributed to the Messenger of Allah which are inauthentic? The Prophet ﷺ said in the hadith collected by Imam Muslim, in Sahih, مَنْ رَوَى عَنِّي حَدِيثًا يُرَى أَنَّهُ كَذِبٌ وَأَحَدُ الْكَاذِبَيْنِ. He says, whoever narrates from me a hadith, and he thinks that it's a lie, he thinks that it's untrue, he thinks that it isn't genuine, then he's one of the 2 liars. How can a person follow the sunnah, learn the sunnah, unless he writes it down and records it, and he makes a distinction to know which is authentic and know which is inauthentic? So these are some of the examples, some of the brief examples, there are countless examples of how the foundation of the compilation of the sunnah took place during the time of Muhammad ﷺ. And we all know that Allah said in the Quran, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِنْ جَاءَكُمْ فَاسِقٌ بِنَبَإٍ فَتَبَيَّنُوا. O you who believe, if a sinful person comes to you with news, with information, then double check. Verify that information. So these are from the foundations of the compilation of the sunnah. So the companions, when they heard the likes of these ayat, and when they heard the likes of these statements of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, they understood what to do. They knew what to do. And they recognized that it was a command from the apostle of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to preserve his sunnah and to pass it on. We know that there were several scripts or suhuf, things which were written during the time of the Messenger of Allah. From them is the Sahifa of Ali radiallahu anhu. The script that Ali radiallahu anhu recorded, and which he said that in this script, in this scroll, is what the Messenger of Allah said about the blood money. He says, وَفِكَاكُ الْأَسِيرِ, and freeing a captive of war. And what the Messenger of Allah said, إِنَّ الْمَدِينَةَ حَرَمٌ. He says, the very Medina is sacred. Medina is sacred, just like Mecca is sacred. مِنْ عَيْرٍ إِلَى ثَوْرٍ, from the Ayr mountain to the Thawr mountain. He says, مَنْ أَحْدَثَ فِيهَا حَدَثًا أَوْ آوَى مُحْدِثًا فَعَلَيْهِ لَعْنَةُ اللَّهِ وَالْمَلَائِكَةِ وَالنَّاسِ أَجْمَعِينَ لَا يَقْبَلُ اللَّهُ مِنْهُ صَرْفًا وَلَا عَدْلًا أَوْ كَمَا قَالَ رَضِيَ اللَّهُ عَنْهُ. He says, in this scroll, this piece of paper that I have with me, or whatever material it was, in this material that I have written down, the Messenger of Allah, he said that Medina is sacred. It's sacred from its boundaries. Whoever makes a crime, or hearsay, or novelty in Al-Medina, or aids the criminal, and protects the criminal, then upon him is the curse of Allah, the angels, and all of mankind. And Allah Azza wa Jalla won't accept anything from him, whether it's obligatory or whether it's something which is done voluntarily. Also we have the Sahifa of Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu as-Siddiq, when he gave to Anas ibn Malik, in which it was mentioned in the zakah of the Messenger of Allah, when he mentioned how many camels were obligatory for zakat to be paid, and goats and sheep and cows. That was written down It was preserved during the time of the Messenger of Allah alayhi salatu wasalam, and the Sahifa al-Sadiqa of Abdullah ibn Amr, and several of the Tabi'een, as Mujahid, and many countless others, they all had sunnah. So this is a clear evidence that the sunnah was recorded during the time of Muhammad and during the time of the Sahaba. However, one may ask, where are the big books during the time of the companions? Where's the major documentation of the sunnah during the time of the companions? We say the reason behind that we can't find a large amount of these documents is because the companions were huffaz. They were geniuses. They were memorizers. We know this is something from the way of the Arabs. Before al-Islam, the Arabs, as the Messenger of Allah said in the authentic hadith, "Inna ummatun ummiyatun, la naktubu wa la nahtib." He says, indeed, we are an illiterate ummah. We're an illiterate ummah. We don't write. We're illiterate. Most of the Arabs, before al-Islam, and when the Messenger of Allah became a messenger, were illiterate. They couldn't write. They couldn't read. But they had something that was very special. Something which was very unique. Something that Allah Azza wa Jalla knew that they were qualified to be bearers and holders of His Shari'ah and to pass it down to the next generation. Something that the great dynasties in the Far East didn't have. And the great kingdoms in Europe didn't have. And that thing was what? It was hifz, memory. In the time of Jahiliyyah, the pagan Arabs, they would memorize thousands of lines of poetry by heart. And they would have competitions, battles, as you say. They would battle each other in poetry. Who memorized the best poetry? Whose qasida was the best, was most eloquent and fluent? They didn't write that. There were only a few people in Mecca who were illiterate. The majority of them were illiterate. However, they had hifz. They can memorize thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of lines of poetry. So we see the first reason behind the majority of the sunnah being memorized and not recorded and written down during the time of the Sahaba is they were in need of it. It's like the Quran. They carried it with their heart. And this, without any doubt, is a major miracle, a major phenomenon that Allah Azza wa Jal chose for this ummah. As Shaykh Muḥammad al-Shanqiti rahimahullah ta'ala stated, from the miracle of the Quran, the sending down of the Quran is a miracle. Its preservation is a miracle. He says that if a person wanted to distort the Quran and add an ayat to the Quran, add a verse to the Quran, he says, لَرَدَّ عَلَيْهِ صِغَارُ الْأَوْلَادِ. He says the small children will refute him. And they say that's not in the surah. Why? Because they memorized it by heart. They memorized it by heart. These other great nations, they didn't have this. They recorded it. They wrote it down. And we can find a perfect example during our daily lives. What's your number? We write it down on the cell phone, huh? What's your email address? Hifz is da'if. It's weak. It's weak. Everything is recorded. Everything is electronic. Everything is written down. Now, so the point that we're trying to get to is that the companions, they heard that statement of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, نَبِّرَ اللَّهُ مُرَعًا سَمِعَ مَقَالَتِي فَوَعَاهَا. May Allah brighten the face of a man who hears my statement and does what with it? Writes it down. He says, فَوَعَاهَا. He stops it up. He puts it in a container, a vessel. The word wi'a, a vase. It holds the water, the heart. So this is some of the special, unique characteristics of the Arabs before Islam in general. And we know that the Messenger of Allah, there were several battles in which when they took captives, when they took the captives from the battles from the Mushrikeen, he would make their ransom for them to teach the companions how to read and write. We'll let you free, but you have to teach this companion and that companion how to read and how to write. They weren't a people of literacy, but they were a people of tremendous, intimidating memorization. So this was the first step in how the Sunnah was recorded. And as we mentioned a few examples of how the Sunnah was actually written down. Now, moving on, because as we said, there isn't enough time. We could sit here until 1 o'clock in the evening just speaking about the companions and how they memorized the hadith. Now we move on after we mentioned some things, and as we know, there are several methods that the companions had in personally accepting a hadith, evaluating them, and grading them. Several examples. The companions, during the time in which they lived, we know in general was a good time. A time of piety, a time of righteousness, a time in which there wasn't much kadhib. There weren't too many innovations. A time in which the Sunnah was prevalent. Honesty was prevalent. So Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu, we know that once he was sitting with some of the tabi'een, some of his students, and from them was Muḥammad ibn Ka'b. He said that I narrated some hadith to Anas ibn Malik, and I narrated some more hadith, and some more hadith, and more hadith. And Anas ibn Malik radiallahu anhu paid him no attention. He didn't even look his way. So Muḥammad ibn Ka'b radiallahu anhu rahimahullah, he said to him, مَا لَكَ يَا Anas? He says, oh Anas, أَرَضِيتَ بِحَدِيثِ كُلِّي? He says, are you pleased with all of my hadith? Or have you rejected all of my hadith? Why aren't you listening to my narration? قال رسول الله, فعل رسول الله, the Messenger of Allah did. The Messenger of Allah said. The Messenger of Allah mentioned. Why aren't you listening to me? What did Anas radiallahu anhu say? He says, كُنَّا, he says, us, the companions, إذا سمعنا أحدا يقول قال رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم ابتدرته أبصارنا وأصغينا إليه بآذاننا. He says, once upon a time, the companions, whenever we heard someone saying that the Messenger of Allah said or did, ابتدرته أبصارنا. He says, the eyes would glance to him directly, pay full attention to that man, and we will lend our ears attentively. He says, فَلَمَّا رَكِبَ النَّاسُ الصَّعْبَ وَالذَّنُورِ. He says, however, when the people begin to ride all types of camels, when the people begin to ride all types of camels, the difficult camel, the stubborn camel, the hardy camel, and the easygoing camel, we didn't accept anything except that we knew of it from the Messenger of Allah. Meaning what? That when the people began to lie, when the innovations came, when the people had a lack of piety, according to the first generation of the Muslims. Because we know that Anas radiallahu anhu, he said in the hadith said by Imam al-Bukhari, إِنَّكُمْ لَتَعْمَلُونَ عَمَالًا هِيَ أَدَّقُ فِي أَعْيُنِكُمْ مِنَ الشَّعْرِ وَإِن كُنَّا لَنَعُدُّهَا عَلَى عَهْدِ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ صَلَّى اللَّهُ عَلَيْهِ وَسَلَّمَ مِنَ الْمُوبِقَاتِ وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. Anas radiallahu anhu, he said, listen closely to what he said. He said to the tabi'een once, he says, indeed, you people perform deeds, make actions that are smaller and less significant in your sight than a piece of hair. He says, but during our time, the time of the Messenger of Allah, we considered those deeds to be from the destructive deeds, the destroyers. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. What if Anas radiallahu anhu saw 2011? What if Anas radiallahu anhu saw 2011, America? What if he saw our community, our homes? What if he heard our statements and saw our actions? He said to the Salaf, the Tabi'een, those people whom Allah is going to have praised and lauded, those people whom the Messenger of Allah said the best of generations, the best of mankind. He said, you perform actions which you look at as small, minute thing. During the time of the companions with the Messenger of Allah, we consider those actions to be destructive. وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. May Allah just forgive us of our sins and make us better and hide our faults. And Umar radiallahu anhu, we know what he would say when he would see some of the actions of some of the people, when he would see some of the women going to the masjid dressed improperly, or if a woman had on perfume and so on and so forth, what he would say, what Aisha radiallahu anhu said. What if they saw our state? What if Umar radiallahu anhu saw us? What if he saw us? What if he saw our condition? وَالْعِيَاذُ بِاللَّهِ. May Allah protect us from it. So we see here in this example is that the companions, they had a method. They had a method. And now the statement of Muḥammad ibn Sirin rahimahullah, which is constantly mentioned, walhamdulillah, and it's quoted all the time, and it's presented to the people, and it's stuff that the people spoke. And what he says, مَا كُنَّا نَسْأَلُ عَنِ الْإِسْنَادِ فَلَمَّا وَقَعَتِ الْفِتْنَةُ قُلْنَا سَمُّوا لَنَا رِجَالَكُمْ فَيُنْظَرُ إِلَى أَهْلِ السُنَّةِ فَيُؤْخَذُ حَدِيثُهُمْ وَيُنْظَرُ إِلَى أَهْلِ الْبِدَعِ فَلَا يُقْبَلُ حَدِيثُهُمْ. أو كما قال. Imam Muslim rahimahullah ta'ala, he mentioned the narration in the introduction of the Sharīʿah that Muhammad ibn Sirin, the great tabi'i, he said that we never used to ask about the isnad. He would accept it. Everyone was pious, no one lied. He says, however, when the fitna took place, when Uthman radiallahu anhu was murdered, and the Khawarij came about, and people began to fabricate a hadith, and people began to have nerves against the Khalifa Rashida. He says, we said, name to us your men. Where did you hear the hadith from? Who did you hear it from? So we would look towards Ahlul Bid'ah, and the hadith wouldn't be accepted. And we'll look towards Ahlul Sunnah, and the hadith will be accepted. This is a method of accepting hadith. But this method applies also to sin. The narrator of hadith has to be pious from the aspect of his aqidah, his manhaj, and from the aspect of his ibadah. As many of the companions said, whenever you, in the tabi'in, they said, whenever we wanted to accept a hadith, we would look at a man and how he offered the salah. We would look at him and how he offered the prayer. That's the first thing we would look at. Not about this, not about that, not about this issue, not about this position. We would look how he made salah. Why was this? Because the Salaf, they understood when Allah said in the Quran, Inna salata tanha anil fahsha'i wal munkar. That verily the prayer, it forbids the person, it inhibits the person from lewd and indecent acts, from evil acts. That if a person prays on time, in congregation, correctly, doing the sunnah, then in most cases, he doesn't drink alcohol. And in most cases, he's not a fornicator or an adulterer. In most cases, he doesn't eat from riba. In most cases, he avoids sin. Well, the one who prays, without a doubt, the one who prays on time, in the masjid, constantly, the one who learns the sunnah of the prayer, the one who stands fast upon the salah, وَإِنَّهَا لَكَبِيرَةٌ إِلَّا عَلَى الْخَاشِعِينَ. As Allah said in the Quran, indeed, the prayer and patience is heavy. It's a burden, except upon those who have khudu', humbleness, and submissiveness. The prayer is no joke. Not just making the salah, Allahu Akbar. La. The prayer, when you get to the masjid on time, Fajr, the Jama'ah, Zuhr, Asr, in Jama'ah, on the front row, you learn the sunnah of the prayer, the adab of the prayer, constantly, without a doubt. There's no doubt about it, that is a sign of Iman and a sign of piety. A sign of piety. And we know that there's a hadith that states, إِذَا رَأَيْتُمُ الرَّجُلَ يَعْتَادُ الْمَسْجِدِ فَاشْهَدُوا لَهُ بِالْإِيمَانِ. When you see a man constantly going to the masjid, then bear witness to his Iman. The hadith is chain of narration is weak. The chain of narration is weak, but the meaning is correct without a doubt. And we also know the other hadith. The one who prays Jama'ah for 40 days straight, يُدْرِكُ التَّكْبِيرَةَ الْأُولَى أو كما قال صلى الله عليه وسلم. And he catches the first takbir on the front row for 40 days. كُتِبَتْ لَهُ بَرَاءَتَانِ. He will be free from two things. كُتِبَتْ لَهُ بَرَاءَةٌ مِنَ النِّفَاقِ وَبَرَاءَةٌ مِنَ النَّارِ أو كما قال. He will be free from hypocrisy and he will be free from the fire. There's a difference of opinion amongst the ulama of hadith over the authenticity of this hadith, but its meaning is correct. So we see that the Salaf, they looked at a person's piety. They looked at a person's piety. They wouldn't take knowledge from a fasiq. They wouldn't take knowledge from a sinner, from an evildoer. They wouldn't take knowledge from a person who has no shame to do ma'asiyah, to be around the people of ma'asiyah, to accompany the people of ma'asiyah. They wouldn't take knowledge from this person. As Imam Malik rahimahullah stated, from the people whom knowledge is not to be taken from, the thief is the fool. يُعْلِنُ سَفَهَا, who openly displays his foolishness. Knowledge is not to be taken from this man, just as knowledge isn't to be taken from a person in the nation. So there is a balance, and there isn't any extreme in either of the two sides. Well, alhamdulillah, we understand knowledge is to be taken from the people of the Sunnah. Knowledge is to be taken from someone upon la shak. Similarly, that person of the Sunnah, that person of the Aqidah and the way of the Salaf has to be pious. He cannot be a sinner. Because the sinner, we can't feel safe. We can't trust that he may lie. He may not have enough piety to remain silent if it's a hadith that he's unsure of. So this is from the method of the evaluation and acceptance of the Sunnah during the time of the companions. And as we said before, there isn't enough time to go and expound this in detail, but this is extremely important. This is extremely important, especially during the time in which we live. And the fitan, the trials and the tribulations, the turmoil, and the kalam, and the qeel and the qal, and this principle and that principle, and this kalam and that kalam, if we apply this principle, what Anas radiallahu anhu said, what the companion said, we looked at his salah, how he prayed, we will be free from many problems and many acts and statements of contradiction. We have to move on to the next point, which is, in brief, the different types of the books of hadith and how they were compiled. During the time of the tabi'een and the followers of the tabi'een, there were several types, or there was the main type of hadith or books of hadith were called al-jawami', plural of the word jami'. This book al-jami' literally means a compilation, a collection of hadith, a collection of statements of the Sahaba, a collection of rulings from Umar radiallahu anhu, or Uthman, or how Ali radiallahu anhu judged between two individuals. They called it jami'. They compiled narrations, whether it was marfu', and we'll explain in terms at a further date, whether it was attributed to the Prophet, whether it was mawquf from the companion, whether it was maqtu', whether it was from the Salaf. They recorded it. And there were several of the followers of the tabi'een who had these jawami', such as Muḥammad ibn Rashid, such as al-Rabi' al-Tabih, such as Ibn Abi Umar al-Adni, and there are several. There are several from the tabi'een and the followers of the tabi'een who had these books which were called what? Jawami'. And the jawami', it meant a compilation of narration. That's all it was. There was no chapter heading. There was no correct or specific arrangement or organization. It was a compilation of hadith. This was the first step in the compilation of the book of Sunnah. Then, as we move on to the second and the third century, before the third century, there was a new step, a step that was taken in the compilation of the Sunnah. And that step was known as al-Muwaffa'at, the book of Muwaffa. And the most famous book, which is called Muwaffā, was the Muwaffā of who? Imam Malik, whose name is Malik ibn Anas ibn Abi Ahlul Hadith. What did Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala say? Ahlul Sunnah are Abdullah a'arifu al-nasi or a'arifu al-khalqi bil-haq. A'arifu al-nasi bil-haq wa arhamuhum lil-khalq. Shaykh Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah ta'ala, he said, Ahlul Sunnah, Ahlul Hadith, they are the most knowledgeable of mankind of the truth. They have the most ilm from everyone. And they are the most merciful to creation. We need to know these things. If we don't know it, who will know Imam Malik's name? Those who call themselves Maliki, people of Sufiya. What was his name? What year did Imam Malik die in? 179. Ahsan, barakallahu fiik. Where was he from? What was Imam Malik from? Kufa, Iraq? Al-Madina. Al-Madina. واضح? طيب. Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, there were several books called Muwatta, such as Ibn Abi Dhi'b and others from the companions and the contemporaries of Imam Malik during the second century. واضح? Imam Malik's Muwatta was the most famous book of the Muwatta. And the arrangement of this book, which was done under the abwab of fiqh. It was according to the book. What was the first chapter in the Muwatta of Malik? Anyone know? The first chapter, I'll tell you the question. In most books of hadith, what is the first chapter that you'll find? Kitab al-Tahara, after interpretation, or Kitab al-Iman, after. What is the first chapter of the Muwatta of Malik? Al-Bayn. La yarhamukallah. La yarhamukallah. Qatila. Al-Bakana. No, may Allah have mercy. Not. May Allah have mercy. So Imam Malik rahimahullah, the first chapter of his book was Al-Wuqut, the times of prayer. So Imam Malik rahimahullah ta'ala, in brief, because we don't have a lot of time, he mentioned the ahadith of the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the statements of the companions, statements of some of the tabi'een, and some of his opinions and his views in his book called Al-Muwatta. However, the difference between the Muwatta and the Jami' was what? Was that it was arranged, it was murattab, it was mubawwab. It was arranged, it had chapter headings. Now, as we mentioned, the Jami' was what? It was nothing but a compilation. That's what it was. Alif, Bata, the book of Tahara, it was ahadith. As for the Muwatta and the books of Muwatta, it was a breakthrough. It was a breakthrough in the compilation of the Sunnah because it took a big step now. So if these books were statements of all three generations, however they were arranged. They had order, organization to them, all this clear. And as we said before, there were several books of Muwatta. But Imam Malik's book was preserved for two main reasons. The first main reason was the severe amount of the ikhlas of Imam Malik. They allowed these people to him and have mercy on him. As he was asked, once he was asked, he said, "Yeah, Abu Abdullah, oh Abu Abdullah, why have you written your book on Muwatta? For what? وَقَدْ صَنَّفَ النَّاسُ الْمُوَطَّأَةِ. The people have written several Muwatta'as. Why are you writing yours? What's the benefit of you writing your Muwatta?" He says, مَا كَانَ لِلَّهِ بَقِي. He says, whatever is for Allah will remain. Whatever is for Allah will remain. Now, we know that there were several scholars, as they said about Layth ibn Sa'd, who was from Egypt, the great Imam, he was the Imam of Misr. He said, إِنَّهُ كَانَ أَفْقَهْ مِنْ مَالِكٍ وَأَلْزَمْ وَأَتْبَعْ لِلْأَثَرِ. They said that Layth ibn Sa'd had more fiqh than Imam Malik. Listen to what he said. He had more fiqh of Malik. And he followed the Sunnah, he claimed it even more than Imam Malik. وَلَكِنْ أَصْحَابُهُ خَذَلُوهُ. His companions did not preserve his ilm. They didn't record his statements and write it down and pass it down. So his ilm was lost. Layth ibn Sa'd had his own method, just as Imam Malik had a method. But who to this day says, I'm Laythi? I'm Laythi. No, it was Maliki. Well, North Africa. Everyone from Algeria to Tunis, to Morocco, Mali, and so on and so forth. Senegal, all Maliki, scholars of the Maliki method, because his knowledge, first his ikhlas, his sincerity, and the hard work of his students was passed down. So this is the reason why we only have the Muwatta and the Malik, which is so famous. There were several books that were Muwatta, but they weren't passed down. Well, the next step, which is the step of the 3rd century. Al-Qarn al-Thalith, the 3rd century, which was known as Al-Asr al-Zahabi, the golden century, the golden era. That century in which the likes of Imam Ahmad, Imam Ibn Ma'in, Imam Ali ibn al-Madini, Imam Muḥammad ibn Yahya al-Zuhri, Imam al-Bukhari, Abu Hatim, Abu Zur'a, Muhammad ibn Muslim ibn Wara, and countless other imams lived during the 3rd century, the golden era. What was the step that was taken in the compilation of the Sunnah? We have that which was called As-Sihah, or Sunan. The first step, or from the first step, there was a new type of book that prevailed, which was called As-Sihah, As-Sahih. And we also had that which was called As-Sunan. And before these books, we had that which was called what? Al-Masanid, a Muslim. Right. Now, we'll mention this briefly. We have several types of books of hadith. We have Musnad, we have As-Sahih, we have As-Sunan, and several other books. Let's deal with these three. Al-Musnad is a compilation of a hadith in which there is no arrangement, there's no order, there's no categorization of the hadith. Rather, all of the hadith are compiled from one companion and one place. For example, Abu Bakr as-Siddiq radiallahu anhu. Let's say, for example, if Imam Ahmad collected 100 hadith from Abu Bakr, 150 hadith that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq narrated. He would take all 150 hadith and put them where? In one place. Whether the hadith spoke about adab, etiquette, divorce, marriage, jihad, buying, selling, al-muhim, is that Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he reported it. All that in one place. So any hadith that you're looking for in the Musnad of Imam Ahmad, if it's from Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, you want to find it where? In the chapters or in one place? In one place. In one place. So the hadith of Ibn Umar, the hadith of Aisha, the hadith of Salama, all in one place, whether it's 2 hadith, 10 hadith, 30 hadith. Waضح? Everyone clear on this? It is a musnad. It's a musnad. There is no fiqh. There's no type of chapter heading with regard to fiqh. Waضح? You can read a hadith and the musnad of Abu Hurairah, on one page talk about the grave, and the next line it will speak about the etiquette of the day of Jumu'ah. Clear. Also in the third generation was that type of book which is called al-Sahīḥ, which was a book that entailed the main type of hadith. And it was arranged according to these types of hadith, such as al-Aqāid, belief, iman, fiqh, salah, zakah, fasting, hajj, jihad, sirah, al-maghazi, marriage, divorce, raising children, so on and so forth. Clear. Hadith that spoke about paradise, hadith that spoke about the hellfire, hadith that spoke about the zuhd, abstaining and indulging in the worldly pleasures. Sahih, waضح? This is called a Sahih, such as the Sahih of Imam al-Bukhari, Imam Muslim during the 3rd century. And the Sahih is a book in which the author has made it upon himself that all of these hadith are authentic and genuine according to him. According to him. Another scholar may differ with him, but according to Imam Muslim, everything he has given you is authentic and genuine. Clear. So the Sahih, if we want to find the hadith of all of the hadith of Abu Hurairah, can we find it in one place? In Sahih Bukhari? No. If the hadith talks about Jumu'ah, we have to look in the book of Jumu'ah. Clear the difference between a Sahih and a Musnad. Also, a Musnad, there's no condition of its authenticity. There isn't any condition of its authenticity. A Musnad, the person could make it in 90% to be authentic, like Imam Muḥammad, and genuine. Or it could be a Musnad in which he compiled everything that he had. Various, fabricated, Hasan, Sahih, al-Muhim, it came to him. Waضح? A Sahih is what is organized and it is genuine according to the author. Everyone clear? The next step is the books which are called Sunnah, such as the Sunnah of who? Abu Dawud. And the Sunnah of who? I can't hear. At-Tirmidhi. Tirmidhi's book is not a Sunnah. We're going to get to that. Ibn Majah, Ahsan. The Sunnah of who? An-Nasai. The Sunnah of who? Ya Ahl Sunnah. Ahl Sunnah I'm speaking to, or Ahl Bid'ah? If you the Sunnah, you should know these things. At the back of your hand. Sunnah of Darimi. Sunnah of Bayhaqi. Sunnah of Daraqutni. Several books of Sunnah. A Sunnah is similar to Sahih. It's similar to Sahih that it is arranged. It has chapter headings. The book of purification, book of salah, book of fasting, book of menses, all this. However, there are some differences. The first difference is that the Sunan, the author of the book, has not made it upon himself. He didn't make a condition for everything to be genuine. He didn't say that everything in his book is sahih. La. It could be sahih, and it could be totally unauthentic. And there are reasons for that, which we don't have the time to mention. But the main purpose, or the main distinguishing mark and factor of the Sunan is that it is arranged according to the books of fiqh. And that its main purpose is to suit fiqh. Well, the Sunan Abi Dawud, it may not talk about this, it may not talk about that, but everything pertains to ahkam. Every ruling that you want in Islam, from dream interpretation, to the rulings of suckering, to the rulings of divorce, to the rulings of emancipating a slave, you're going to find something in Sunan Abi Dawud. Well, this Sunan pertains to fiqh. Clear on this? Everyone clear on this? واضح inshallah. This is Sunnah. And please forgive me for rushing or speaking that, but I have to because there's so little time and there's information that we want to give you. Inshallah. So, this was the step of the third generation. Now, that generation which was, as we said, the golden era. That was the generation in which all the great books were compiled. Say al-Bukhari, before Sahih Bukhari, the Muslim of Imam Muhammad. And there are several other Masani, several other books of Muslim. They were compiled during the time of the 3rd century. We had the books of Sharīʿah, Sahih Muslim, Sahih Bukhari, several others. the books of Sunnah, Sunnah al-Darimi, Sa'id ibn Mansur, and so on and so forth, during the 3rd century. So the 3rd century was the time in which the Sunnah received a great deal of service and a great deal of focus. And there were the jewels and the gems that we read today and benefit from, and we live in their state, we sit in their state, came from that generation, from the efforts of those scholars of that generation. And here, I believe that we may be going a little too far and a little too fast. And we know that from the etiquette of a circle or sitting of knowledge, as one of the tabi'in said, إِنَّ الْمَجْلِسَ إِذَا قَالَ كَانَ لِلشَّيْطَانِ فِيهِ نَصِيبٌ. That if this sitting is too long, and if the circle is too long, then the devil, the shaitan, he will take part in it. He gets a portion out of it. But yet, people may fall asleep, some may not off, the speaker may talk so much, he may just forget what he's saying or just start talking and so on and so forth. So it's from the etiquette and the adab of the salaf is that the majlis shouldn't be too long. So we'll stop here. And we ask Allah to facilitate for us and to make for us another meeting in which we have the sufficient time to sit down and to explain these affairs and present them properly without rushing, without in a hasty manner. This is very important, and the more detail is mentioned, it's even more interesting. هذا والله أعلم. صلى الله وسلم وبارك على عبده ورسوله نبينا محمد. سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك وأتوب إليك. Right. Our brother, may Allah bless him and preserve him, asked, when we mention the types of books of hadith, such as the Sahih, such as Sunnah, such as Musnad, what type of hadith does the book Kitab al-Tawheed fall under? The answer to the question, alhamdulillah, is very simple. Kitab al-Tawheed, by the Imam of the Da'wah, the Sheikh of the Da'wah of the current, later generation, Muḥammad ibn al-Ḥamīd, may Allah be pleased with him and rewarding him well on behalf of all of us. For need us sitting here today and to understand Tawheed, Shirk, the evil, and the blessing of Tawheed is from his effort, from his suhood. And we all know that Ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah ta'ala, it didn't come evil. As it's easy for us to book of Kitab al-Tawheed, Salah, Shirk, Tawheed, Dalil, La, it's a struggle. Ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah ta'ala, threatened. He was slandered. He was slandered to this day. He was kicked out from town to town and so on and so forth. It didn't come easy. They fought. Literally, they fought to establish Tawheed. So it's upon us to make dua for him and to have mercy upon him. As for the book of the Tawheed, then it is from the book of Aqidah. It's from the book of Creed and Belief in Tawheed. And it's not from the book of Hadith. Even though there are countless hadith and countless athar narrations that Shaykh Muḥammad ibn Abdul Wahhab, rahimahullah ta'ala, mentioned in that book. And as some of the scholars of the past said, is that Kitab al-Tawheed, not the past, but past before us, because Ibn Abdul Wahhab died later on in 15th century. His book, they said that it's like Sahih al-Bukhari, not meaning in authenticity, not meaning in authenticity, but the way in which he arranged it. Babu ma ja'a fi kadha, bab kadha, bab qawlullah ta'ala kadha. Just like Sahih al-Bukhari. We find that there were several hadith, several ayat, several narrations that Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala mentioned as a chapter heading in Sahih. And Imam al-Bukhari rahimahullah ta'ala, he didn't mention any introductions in Sahih. Imam Muslim rahimahullah, he mentioned a lengthy introduction to his Sahih. Imam al-Bukhari didn't mention any introduction to his book. The first thing he mentioned was the hadith of the Messenger of Allah. And that's just like Kitab al-Tawheed. Babu ma ja'a fi qawlillahi ta'ala, and then he mentioned the hadith of ma khalaqtul jinna wal insa illa liya'budun. So Kitab al-Tawheed is not from the book of hadith, but it's from the book of Creed, and it has several hadith in that book. Wallahu a'lam. Fadl. Barakallahu fiik. So, the brother asked, Abu Hatim, Allah bless him, says, when we mention some hadith are authentic, some hadith which are inauthentic, they're not genuine, but they have correct meaning. Can we expound on it? It's a very important question. And if you don't understand this answer correctly, We don't understand the question first, it can become very confusing. We find in this book a hadith da'if. Sheikh al-Albani, may Allah be pleased with him, said this hadith is da'if, but Sheikh Fulan or Fulan, he quoted it. And this and that, and why is it? And what is our position towards hadith? We say firstly, is that there's a principle that the Messenger of Allah, as he mentioned to you, he warned us from attributing to him that which isn't from him, that which isn't authentic from him. So this is the first position. However, there's some weak hadith, and before we say a weak hadith, we must understand what is called sahih hadith. What is the conditions of an authentic hadith? Which, bismillah, we will speak on in the coming lectures, inshallah. Once we understand the conditions of an authentic hadith, we can understand what is the category or the conditions or the state of an authentic hadith. So, a weak hadith isn't something which is always agreed upon. Rather, the scholars of hadith are no different than scholars of usul. And the scholars of fiqh, they differ over issues. They differ. Is it halal? Is it haram? Is it wajib? Is it recommended? The scholars of hadith, they may differ over one hadith. Is it da'if or is it sahih? The scholar who sees it to be sahih, he's going to quote it. And the scholar who sees it to be da'if, he's not going to quote it. So there's not something which is agreed upon every single hadith. Well, as for its meaning being correct or incorrect, the people of knowledge have clearly stated that the authenticity of a hadith is of two types, of two categories. Sihhatul mabna wa sihhatul ma'na. The authenticity of the structure of the hadith, the infrastructure, the isnad and the method, it being authentic according to the rules and the precepts of Ahlul Hadith. And then there's a hadith which its infrastructure, it does not fulfill the standard. It doesn't meet the qualifications of authenticity, but its meaning is clear and it's authentic. This is why many of the tabi'in, they said, "Inna lil hadithi la daw'an fi daw'in nahar." Because there are several hadith. The hadith which is authentic and genuine, it has a light. It has a light, like the light of the day. Clear that it's from the mishkat al-nubuwwah, from the lantern of prophecy. This is what Muhammad said. This is the general message. This is what the Prophet would say. And there's some hadith which have a darkness, like the darkness of the night. The Prophet would never say that. That's lewd. That's false. That's nonsense. That's not eloquent. That doesn't make sense. That's contradictory and so on and so forth. So the hadith is weak in its chain or its method, and the meaning of it is munkar. It's rejected, it's denounced, it's a foul meaning. So there's some hadith which are totally unauthentic or inauthentic. Now, however, the meaning could be authentic. And this job or this ruling goes back to the ulama of hadith, not a small student of knowledge, not an intermediate student of knowledge, not any Joe Blow person on the street. That's correct. The expert of hadith. Those individuals that Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala stated, those people, he says the hadith, اختلط بلحمه ودمه. Those people whose the hadith, the kalam of the Rasul has become intertwined, mixed with their blood and their flesh. The people who day and night study, memorize, review, and they see what Muhammad said. The general meaning of his message. Those experts of hadith, as the people of the past mentioned, that the scholar of hadith, the expert scholar of hadith, is like what? He said it's kasayrafi. It's like a jeweler. It's like a jeweler. Or a person who deals with coins. The person who's an expert at his field, you bring to him a dirham, a gold coin, or a silver coin, or a ring, or a bracelet, or a watch. What does he do? Does he sit down and look? He picks it up? What does he do? What's the first thing he does? The expert is on 30, 40 years. He looks at it, thinks, worthless. What do you mean? It's gold. It's worthless. You didn't look at it. It's worthless. He can touch it. He can feel it. How heavy it is. What's the reflection of the light? And so, because he's an expert, he's been doing it for 30 years. His night, his day, his lunch, his breakfast, his dinner has been gold. Well, the money, you give him the money, he feels it, it's fake. Now, overseas, the people who deal with honey, and we know that from the best of the honey is the honey which comes from Yemen. You know, that's Sidr. I had a teacher in the Jamia, Sheikh Abu Bakr, of the Summit, Ibn ʿAbd, Hafidhullah Ta'ala, who was from the Kibar of the teachers in the Islamic University. From those teachers who were there during the time of Sheikh Rabi', Hafidhullah Ta'ala, when he was there, Sheikh Muqbil, Rahimahullah Ta'ala, and several of the major scholars of the Sunnah. He's been teaching for years. And he said to us once, he was teaching us a takhrij, the art of transmitting the hadith. He said to us, there's the scholars of hadith, he says there's some people, because he's originally from Yemen, he says in Yemen there are people, when they deal with the honey, they don't have to take the honey. He says they take the honey and they pour it. And they look at its consistency, how does it flow? And they can tell whether it's pure honey or whether it's mixed with molasses, whether it's cut. Because that's what they do day and night, honey. They eat, sleep, and honey. So the similarity that we're trying to make is what? The scholars of hadith, those who spend their entire lives studying, memorizing, researching, this is the gift that they are given from Allah Azza wa Jalla. If you stay with a person for 20 years, side by side, we traveled together, we ate together, we did this together, wouldn't you know his personality? If someone says that Sheikh Umar said this, I said, you're lying. You're lying. I've been with the brother for 30 years. You couldn't have said that. Now you can. وهكذا. طيب, the ulama of hadith, Allah Azza wa Jalla has given them this gift, this malaka, talent from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So these are the individuals who declare what's authentic, the meaning, not for any general person. واضح? So don't think that if a hadith is weak in its chain, its meaning has to be weak. La. The inkling, the ghalat, the fallacy, the mistake. Hadith, they're rather, there are hadith which are fabricated. وَلَيَذُ بِاللَّهِ, a lie upon the Messenger of Allah sallallahu, and they have beautiful meaning. Beautiful meaning and correct meaning. Because you know that the liars and the fabricators, when they wanted to fabricate a hadith, what did they do? They would put something together that was good, something that was amazing. So that the people could come to them. As we'll stop here. We don't want to do. واضح? Clear? أبو حاتم واضح؟ خلاص? Clear? Clear. طيب. بارك الله. تفضل عبد الله. طيب. بارك الله فيكم. What is the authenticity, or how can we depend upon the hadith that I mentioned in the introduction of the Muqaddimah of al-Arba'un al-Nawawiyya? These are hadith, as several of the scholars have mentioned, are all inauthentic and they're all incorrect. Some of them are fabricated, some of them are called muttalah or matruk, very, very weak, on the borderline of being alive. And some are just weak. Whoever memorizes 40 hadith from my nation, bu'itha faqihan, he'll be sent. These hadith are unauthentic. They're unauthentic. However, without check, it's a virtue, and memorizing the hadith of the Messenger of Allah, without a doubt. And as a benefit, there's several books in which the scholars mentioned 40 hadith before and after Imam Nawawi. His book became so famous and so popular because of the ikhlas of Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah, the sincerity and his hard work which he had. Imam Nawawi, we all know he died. He was a young man. He was 40 years old. Look at the books he left behind. Riyadh al-Salihin, al-Nawawiyya, Extension Sahih Muslim, al-Majmu' Sharh al-Muhaddith. Every book that he mentioned in every pen is the most famous book. The most famous explanation of Sahih Muslim is what? That of Nawawi. And there were countless scholars who explained Sahih Muslim before Nawawi. Rather, a Nawawi, he depended upon the previous explanations. The explanation of al-Iyal, of al-Maziri, and al-Ubbi, and so on and so forth. All those people came before Nawawi. Imam Nawawi, he took all of those things from the previous book. However, his book became famous because of his sincerity. And it's mentioned that Imam Nawawi, rahimahullah ta'ala, there wasn't a night that went by except that he fell asleep at his desk. He never fell asleep lying down because he was always hard working. Allah Azza wa Jalla blessed him. There's no Muslim in the dunya, I don't think, who doesn't know Riyadh al-Salihin. Any Muslim, no matter where he may be, his race, his color, where he's from, his aqidah, everyone knows Garden of the Righteous. Nah? Right or wrong? 9 out of 10 Muslim homes, if you enter their home, you're going to find the Riyadh al-Salihin. Sahih? It is one of the blessings of Allah Azza wa Jalla upon them, and know we may Allah have mercy upon us and forgive him of his sins and reward him well on our behalf. So these hadith are unauthentic. Fadl. Sorry. The brother asked a question. Your name, Sheikh? Sheikh Ja'far. The President says, when we say, oh, kama qal, what you can literally translate to mean, or as the Prophet said, in this meaning, verbatim, so on and so forth. Does that prevent us from lying on the Prophet? Very good question. This is extracted, it's taken from the Sahaba themselves, several of the companions. Whenever they said a hadith, they would say, and they were companions, they were memorizers, and they were pious. They were people of the pure Arab tongue. But whenever, like such as Anas radiallahu anhu and others, whenever they said, the Messenger of Allah said, the Messenger of Allah did, they would say, "Oh, kama qal." So without a doubt, this is something that would be in Allah prevent a person from falling into line on the Messenger of Allah and saying a wrong or an incorrect narration. However, and also there are many scholars of today, such as, as an example, Sheikh Muḥammad rahimahullah ta'ala, if you listen to his lectures, often you'll hear him saying, "Oh, kama qal," "Oh, bihadha al-ma'na," "Oh, bihadha al-ma'na," or in this meaning. And Sheikh Muḥammad rahimahullah had an excellent memory. Yet still, he would say that. However, a Muslim who's unsure of the hadith, like really, really shaky about the hadith, he should leave it alone. He should leave it alone. Even if he says, "Oh, kama qal," or "I heard a hadith," or "I read a hadith," he should leave it alone. That's that. But even if it's a hadith that you're sure of, you should say, "Oh, kama qal," it's excellent. Barakallahu feekum. Wallahu a'lam. Inshallah, if there are any questions, I don't know if the questions can take this before the start after Salat, we get the brother return. We'll be over there. Not to have any questions can take this.